Hey guys, today's video we're going to do some controller talk and try to explain how different controllers can affect the driving experience of the car. So I have a few different controllers here, but we have the newest AFX 120 ohm controller. This is an older Aurora controller, which was used in the AFX sets before this one. I also have what we would call an entry-level electronic controller. So this is a Professor motor. This one is a 45 ohm. So these two right here have very similar feel on the, as far as the car goes on the track. And then we go to the opposite extreme, which this is going to be a Defalco DD531, so has adjustable sensitivity, a bunch of other stuff on it that I'll explain when we get there. But just first off, we wanted to talk about how different controllers will affect the car. So we'll use the AFX controller as an example. I don't have this one hooked up just because it won't hook up to a commercial type track, but I do have these two hooked up, and I'll be able to kind of show you guys what it is that we're talking about. But here we have 5 totally different cars. We have an Aurora T-Jet, okay, an original skinny tire. We have the Mega G Plus, which uses a CAN motor. We have an Auto World X-Traction. We have a Viper VSpec, and then this was just a Viper modified that I grabbed out of my drawer. So all of these cars have different levels of downforce. So when you stick the car on, the amount of downforce that it takes to lift the car up, or amount of, I don't know, pressure, I guess you could call it, to pull the car up, can give you an idea of how much downforce it has. So as you can see, the T-Jet, there is nothing there. And you might be wondering, you know, what does that have to do with the controller? Well, what it has to do with the controller is the more downforce the car has, the heavier the car thinks that it is, as far as like how much power it takes to get the car to move. So this car will take very little voltage and amperage to move on the track. This car will take a little bit more. And obviously as you go up, like this car has got mega downforce, and that car, it might take, you know, 6 volts or so for that thing to actually break loose. Now, once the car gets moving, the amount of amperage and power that it takes to keep it moving, it drops significantly. So because that kind of friction wall or that downforce barrier has been broken. So with one type of controller like this one, for instance, that I believe this is a 60 ohm controller. It might be, you know, it could be around a 45 ohm. But with this controller, with the T-Jet, you might barely be on the throttle. Like that right there might be, you know, the car's nice and moving. Whereas with this car, it might be different. It might be further on. And I can tell you, as you get into the modified stuff, you're gonna be giving it like that much throttle. So if you watch my finger, we're at like 80% before that car even moves. Then once the car gets moving, it's going to be going probably too fast, which is going to cause you to let off the throttle. It'll slow down and you'll repeat that cycle. You'll always be behind the car essentially. And what we call that is spongy. It feels spongy, and that's what a adjustable controller solves. So we'll start out our test here. We're using the 45 ohm controller. We're on 18 volts. I understand that you could run these on 22 or run it on whatever you want. We're just gonna show you for this particular video, okay? So to make the car crawl, you can see if you look inside of there, I don't know if it'll show, but we're about, I'd say about 1/8 of a throttle, okay? And the car is just kind of crawling around the track. So this isn't a bad matchup right here. What you do wanna always check is make sure that your lowest startup, that the car will be able to go around the entire track without crashing. If the car was doing this and this was the slowest that it would go, it wouldn't be good, because you could see the car can't even make it through one corner. Part of that is because it has friggin' great grandpa Chuck's whoever your great grandpa is. Mine's not actually Chuck, but you want to make sure that you can go around the track at that lowest setting. So that car worked great there. We're going to try the Mega G Plus. Okay, we'll put the Mega G Plus. So this car, you can see, we'll put this back here so that you guys can see it move. I barely touched the throttle, and this is the slowest that this car can go, which is not bad, especially for our track. You know, if you have like really tight corners, that might be too fast, okay? And then as you throttle down, the voltage increases and the car picks up. So again, this is a good matchup right here. One thing you can do if you have an adjustable power supply, and let's say that this controller worked great for this car, not so great for this car, you could turn the voltage down and that would make this more drivable. One thing too, resistor type controllers do not like running them on that, like they don't like your throttle being constant in one spot. So from running that car at that first setting, it is trimming voltage all the way through, because this thing has full power going in, and when you throttle down, it's regulating how much goes out. So the closer you get to full throttle, the less work everything here in the controller is doing, and the power is just going in and out. There's no power drop or no resistance being bled off through heat, which when you do it at the very beginning, it's like the worst thing you could possibly do. Essentially is hold the throttle at like constant quarter throttle or something like that. If we burn it up during this video, hey, we did it for you guys. We did it for the learning, but we won't, obviously. So next up, just to continue to show you guys how different cars react, and we'll kind of put these cars out in line here based on how they went through. This is the X traction, so that's minimum throttle. Not too bad, okay? Again, as I'm doing this minimal throttle, the voltage output right now might only be like 3 or 4 volts. It might be 5 volts, but you got to remember we have 18 going into this. So what is happening to that remaining 13 volts? That's the heat that you're feeling, okay? On a controller like this, the entire controller, I mean, you guys know, you guys have felt these things get hot. That's essentially what's happening. So a lot of times when guys would ask us about tracks and designs and layouts, and nothing against guys that have been doing this for 30, 40, 50 years, but like if you build a track where you're at quarter throttle the whole track and then you only are punching it on the straightaway, you're not a track designer, because that's just like, no tracks like that. That's like driving down the street, you know, and no person that's designing street roads is designing racetracks. So just wanted to throw that out there, and also make you guys aware too that like if you are going to build a track where you want to be in constant throttle, you want to make sure that the track can handle a higher kind of a higher voltage essentially, so the car can go faster to get around that track. That way you don't end up hurting your controller. This problem that we're talking about of bleeding the heat off, it is not a problem on an adjustable controller, okay? They're a lot more robust than these are, and far more than these, but you know, we're just kind of, for the video's sake, and hopefully we're not jumping around too much, but I'm trying to explain things as I go. So now we have the VSpec on here, okay? So you can see the car is not even moving yet, okay? So that was a lot more throttle. So that would be what I would call sponginess. Still okay for these ones, because I'm about to go this fast. I'm about half throttle. The downside to that, if you look at this remote, is if you're running slow at half throttle, that's all the range you have. You're only using like half of your linear motion, which is just not really ideal, you know? That's why people think sometimes this stuff's like an on-off switch, and it shouldn't be. It should be a nice linear drive, which you definitely want a nice linear drive, and you can get that out of any car. This modified, I mean, this thing probably is gonna take almost 3/4 throttle. And when I'm doing that, it's just running so much heat through here. So now the car's cruising, and like it's just immediately gets hot. So I don't want to mess this thing up. I think you guys get the point. And I am now going to show you what, we'll unhook this. I will show you what an adjustable controller does. So this thing has a lot of bells and whistles on it, a lot of adjustability. The only one we're going to talk about today is the resistance, because that's what we're talking about with all of these controllers. So I have slow to fast, okay? And on this controller, if we put it on slow, it's around 100 ohms, which will just make this car to where it will crawl. Like I can make it run so slow, okay? We'll do that again from right here so that you can see my finger movement. Okay, so this thing is like really, really slow. Now, you probably wouldn't keep this thing there. I would probably turn it up, but we're gonna, just for the video's sake, we're gonna go to 5 now, okay? Okay, so this is minimum throttle at 5, which is way too fast because the car is just uncontrollable. So I'll dial that back to a crawl. But that's the benefit to this controller, and that is even evident on like a $90 DD505, which is our 2-wire, well, it's not ours, it's the Falco 2-wire. Works great on AFX sets. You know, it's a 2-wire setup, so you don't have the brake setup and stuff like that on it. But if you were running this car, and we'll just dial this thing in here to where it feels about right. So that's at 2, and that feels really good, okay? Maybe a little bit much for the S's. Maybe we'll dial it back to like 1.5, okay? But the car does drive around at that. And let's say, you know, you wanted to jump in, we'll just leapfrog over to the VSpec, okay? Now, the VSpec, same thing. If I leave it at that setting, it will still run, and it'll just run slow. But that's obviously way too slow for how this car wants to run, so I'll turn it up to, say, 4, okay? It's at 4 right now. What that does is that means that this entire band now, the entire bands of the controller is there if I want to use it for a linear throttle. Whereas if I turn it down, now I'm like halfway through if we're running it at 100. Same thing as the other controllers. It's just on this one you have the luxury of turning it up. So if you want to see what 10 looks like, this is going to be like almost max voltage. So this is the slowest that it'll go, which is obviously too fast for this magnet package. And you might say, well, why would you ever need it to go that high? Like, what's the point of that? Well, when you get into stronger and stronger magnet cars like this modified here, you do need to start using that range. So this is the slowest that it'll go, which for this particular car, it's still too much. We'll back that off. But let's just see what it runs like at 0. Okay, so again, we're about half throttle, not ideal. We'll go to 5. Okay, so here's 5. Barely running it off of the bottom. Okay, so that thing, I mean, the front end came off. This was a car out of my drawer. And it's probably in there because this old school front end can't handle the power. Need to get a Viper front end on there because that one ain't working. But you can see how you have that full adjustability there. If you wanted to run the Mega G Plus, you could turn it down, crawl this thing around, get it to the right speed level. If you have super tight corners on certain lanes, I mean, you know, when you run on a racetrack and you actually race, we usually will run each lane. So you might have different controller settings for yellow, the middle, or red, or the outside. It's just another tuning tool that is amazing. I mean, being able to change how fast and how slow the car's like startup voltage is amazing with a controller like this. And a lot of guys, I mean, I see this a lot. Guys there's so many dials here, and they're so stimulated by the fact that they have this controller that they're just turning dials and they really don't know what the heck they're doing. I know you guys know who I'm talking about. And I mean, I've suffered from it. Everybody who's ever had one of these has gone through that. What you need to know is you need to know what one's your sensitivity pot, and you can color this or put a mark on here, whatever you want to do. But you just need to know which one that is, put it on 0, and if you want a fresh start on a controller, put everything in the middle. You know, put the brake at 5. I mean, if you had a brake, we're not going to talk about brakes right now today, but you could turn this thing to 5, touch the throttle and say, oh wow, that's too much. Where's slower? Okay, 0's slower. Okay, now I know where that's at. That's a little bit too slow, so we're gonna just dial a little bit more in there. We're at 2 now, that feels pretty good, okay? Don't worry about the rest of the stuff. And guys, it wouldn't kill you to keep notes on this stuff, you know? Like, if this particular car wants 2, then that's what it wants. Just make a note of it. You can make a mental note, but after you know, if you have more than 10 cars, you're probably not gonna remember. But you could put it there, go back to your notes, or if you're racing specifically, I would absolutely keep notes. And I would even keep notes as to what my controller settings were for each lane and brakes. So typically, you know, running the gutter lanes, insides or outsides, we run less sensitivity, a little bit more brake. Some guys like to run less sensitivity and run the same brake because they want the car to roll through those tight corners. Totally is up to you. The point I'm trying to make today is that the adjustable controller, it just gets you to a whole nother level of like the experience you get out of this stuff. I can't tell you how many people are using this controller that was made for your 7-year-old hand, okay? Not your 67-year-old hand, okay? This was made for a 7-year-old's hand. It was also made to just be a toy controller. Like, you gotta set aside the want for more cars. Get yourself a good controller, get yourself a good power supply. Then it makes all your cars that much more enjoyable. If you wanna run less voltage, more voltage, whatever, or if you have an adjustable controller, even if you don't have the brake function on it, totally fine, don't even worry about it. The adjustability of the sensitivity pot is absolutely worth it. It's worth the $90 for the DeFalco DD505. There are a few other controllers out there in that price range that have the adjustable potentiometer, but none of them are gonna be as robust as the DeFalco. Obviously, this isn't sponsored by DeFalco either. This is just me sharing my opinion and my experience over the last 20 plus years of doing this stuff. So hopefully that helped you guys. One last thing to point out, if you're new and just now getting into HO and you have a modern AFX set, like pretty much 2010 to now, it's gonna have this controller in it that has the 120R on the top. This controller will only work well with the AFX Mega G Plus cars that have the CAN motors in them, okay? Don't even try to run anything else on it, because what'll happen is you'll end up burning up the resistor, and then when you go back, you'll turn this into an on-off switch is what'll happen. And then when you go back to trying to drive this, it'll just be on-off, 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 okay? So what I recommend to guys is keep this set up here. If you don't want to splurge on a new controller to run like Tycos and any other stuff, find off of eBay or somewhere an old Aurora controller. It'll do a much better job with like the inline stuff like Tycos, Super G Plus, the Viper cars. Still not ideal, but you can find them for pretty cheap. And then if you still don't want to go for the DD505, which like I said, it's $90. These guys here are around, I think they're in the high 40s. But it is a fixed dome controller still. So I would definitely say if you're at that price point, just sell a car or save for a couple more weeks, one more paycheck, two more paychecks to get that DD505, because once you get it, you will not ever go back to anything like this. And you know, if you're watching this and you've experienced that change that I'm talking about, go ahead and share your own feedback in the comments there. And that way other people, you know, they don't feel like I'm just trying to sell them on something. I'm not trying to sell you guys on anything other than the experience that a good controller can give you. Guys have 500, 600, 1,000 cars, and they're still using this damn controller. And it drives me crazy because, you know, they have no problem spending $100 on an older car that they're looking for. And then they're driving it with this. And you know, if you're doing that for the old school experience, that's totally fine, I get it. But if you're putting tires on them and pickup shoes and you're wanting to get performance out of them, just spend 90 bucks at least on a 505 and it'll make every single car, every car that you have, so much better to drive, so much more enjoyable. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. If I forgot anything or, you know, missed anything or didn't make anything clear, go ahead and throw it in the comments and we'll do our best to come back in and answer those. And if you disagree with me, go ahead and put that in there too, because I'd love to hear the argument as to, you know, why you like using this over something more modern that just makes the overall experience better. So we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.